2 doctors, 1 lawyer, and then there's her. Our biggest disappointment. Mom set it to a table of 14 relatives while I stood 3 feet away, holding a stack of dirty plates like a servant in my own family home. Nobody flinched. Nobody defended me. They just nodded along, sipping wine and accepting my mother's verdict like it was the weather forecast. What none of them knew, what my mother would discover in approximately 4 minutes, was that the disappointment clearing her dishes had quietly become one of the most powerful healthcare executives in the Midwest. And the surgeon who'd saved her life 3 months ago was about to make a very interesting phone call. Before I tell you what happened when that phone rang, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And ask yourself honestly, if the person who called you their biggest failure suddenly needed to thank you for their survival, how would you handle that moment? My name is Tessa Williams. I'm 36 years old, and I've spent most of my life being measured against siblings I was never meant to compete with. Growing up in our family in suburban Minneapolis meant growing up with very specific definitions of success. My father was a cardiologist. My mother was a former nurse who'd given up her career to raise children and manage our family's social standing. Success, in their vocabulary, meant medicine or law. Period. My older brother Marcus became a neurosurgeon. My sister Valerie became an oncologist. My younger brother Julian became a corporate attorney at a top firm. I became a business major. The disappointment was immediate and permanent. Business? My father said when I declared my major at the University of Minnesota. What are you going to do with that? Sell things. I want to understand how organizations work. How to build systems that help people. Your sister is going to cure cancer. Your brother is going to save people's brains. And you want to understand organizations. He said the word like it was something you'd scrape off your shoe. From that moment on, I became the family asterisk. The one they mentioned last, if at all. The one whose career updates were met with polite nods and quick subject changes. The one who sat at the kids' table long after I'd earned a seat with the adults. I graduated with honors. They didn't attend. I got my MBA from Kellogg, one of the top business schools in the country. They sent a card. I started working in healthcare administration, combining my business degree with a genuine passion for improving how hospitals serve patients. They didn't ask questions. The thing about being invisible is that it gives you freedom. Nobody watches the disappointment. Nobody tracks your movements. Nobody expects anything, which means nobody gets in your way. I worked my way up through hospital administration with the same quiet determination I developed surviving family dinners. Assistant administrator at 26. Director of operations at 29. Chief operating officer at 32. At 34, I did something nobody in my family imagined possible. I led an investment group that acquired Lakewood Regional Medical Center, a struggling 400-bed hospital in the Minneapolis suburbs. We restructured operations, brought in top talent, upgraded facilities, and turned it into one of the highest-rated healthcare systems in the state. I became the majority owner and CEO. The hospital my family didn't know I owned happened to be the same hospital where my siblings had privileges. The same hospital where Marcus performed neurosurgeries and Valerie treated cancer patients. They had no idea. The ownership was structured through a healthcare holding company. My name appeared on documents they'd never see. I attended board meetings they didn't know existed. For 2 years, I watched my siblings walk through hallways I controlled, perform surgeries in operating rooms I'd upgraded, use equipment I'd authorized purchasing. They complained about hospital administration in my presence, never knowing they were complaining about me. The irony was exquisite, and I wasn't ready to end it. Then Mom got sick. It started with fatigue and shortness of breath. She blamed stress, then age, then the weather. By the time she finally saw a doctor, the diagnosis was serious. Severe mitral valve stenosis requiring open-heart surgery. The best cardiac surgery program in the region was at Lakewood Regional. My hospital. I found out about her admission through the system, not through a phone call. Nobody thought to tell the disappointment that Mom was having major surgery. I learned because her name appeared in patient records I had access to. I watched from a distance as the team I'd built prepared to save her life. Dr. Samuel Okafor, the cardiac surgeon I'd personally recruited from Cleveland Clinic, would perform the procedure. The surgical suite I'd funded the renovation of would host the operation. The nursing staff I'd invested in training would manage her recovery. The surgery was successful. Mom spent a week recovering at Lakewood, never knowing her disappointing daughter owned the building, employed her surgeon, and had quietly ensured she received the best possible care. I visited once, briefly, when I knew my siblings wouldn't be there. She was asleep. I stood in the doorway of the private room I'd authorized, watching her breathe, feeling emotions I couldn't name. Then I left. That was 3 months ago. Thanksgiving arrived like it always did, with a command performance expected from all Williams' children. Mom was recovered, back to full strength, and eager to host the extended family at the house I'd grown up in. I almost didn't go. I'd been invited out of obligation, the way you invite a distant cousin you don't really like but can't exclude without causing drama. But something made me show up anyway. The house was crowded with aunts, uncles, cousins, my siblings and their perfect spouses, everyone performing their roles in the family hierarchy. Marcus talked about a complicated surgery. Valerie discussed a research grant. Julian mentioned a case that might make partner. I helped in the kitchen, set the table, filled water glasses, the tasks nobody else wanted to do. Dinner conversation flowed around me like I wasn't there. Medical breakthroughs, legal victories, vacation homes, private schools for the grandchildren. Then Uncle Robert, 3 glasses of wine deep, asked the question I'd been dreading. So Tessa, what are you up to these days? Still doing, whatever it is you do. Before I could answer, Mom sighed dramatically. 2 doctors, 1 lawyer, and then there's her. Our biggest disappointment. The table murmured in vague agreement. My siblings didn't defend me. My father studied his mashed potatoes. Aunt Patricia actually nodded. I picked up a stack of dirty plates and headed toward the kitchen, my face carefully blank. That's when Mom's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and frowned. It's Lakewood Regional. Dr. Okafor's office. I should take this. She answered on speaker, too comfortable with the surgeon who'd saved her life to bother with privacy. Mrs. Williams, this is Dr. Okafor. I apologize for calling during the holiday, but I wanted to follow up on your recovery and share some wonderful news. Of course, doctor. I'm feeling much better, thanks to you. I can't take all the credit. The hospital's investment in our cardiac program made your outcome possible. Actually, that's why I'm calling. The hospital owner has been following your case personally. She wanted me to express her wishes for your continued recovery. Mom preened at the attention. How thoughtful. Who is the owner? I should send a thank you note. Her name is Tessa Williams. I believe she's actually your daughter. There was a pause. I'm sorry. Mom's voice was suddenly uncertain. Tessa Williams. Your daughter. She's the majority owner and CEO of Lakewood Regional. She led the investment group that acquired the hospital 2 years ago. The surgical suite where I operated on you? She funded that renovation. The cardiac program that saved your life? She built it. Another pause. Longer this time. I was told she'd be with your family today, Dr. Okafor continued. So I thought I'd pass along the message personally. She's too humble to mention it herself, but you should know, your daughter has transformed our hospital into one of the finest healthcare systems in the region. We're quite proud to work for her. I stood in the kitchen doorway, dirty plates still in my hands, watching the color drain from my mother's face. She turned slowly toward me. Tessa. I set down the plates. Hi, Mom. The silence that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced in that house. No witty comments from Marcus. No dismissive sighs from Valerie. No checking of phones from Julian. Just 14 people staring at me like I'd materialized from thin air. You own Lakewood Regional? Marcus finally managed. Majority owner and CEO. 2 years now. But that's where I operate. Where Valerie has privileges. I know. Valerie's voice was strangled. You've known this whole time? You never said anything. Nobody asked. I was just the disappointing one, remember? The business major who was going to sell things. I looked at my mother directly. Your surgery was performed in a surgical suite I funded. By a surgeon I recruited. With equipment I authorized. In a hospital I own. The disappointment saved your life, Mom. And you didn't even know. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Tessa, I didn't. You didn't know. Because you never bothered to find out. None of you did. I looked around the table. You all were so busy measuring me against each other that you never considered I might be building something different. Something you couldn't see because you weren't looking. My father spoke for the first time. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you ask? Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family gathering, you talked about surgeries and cases and achievements. Not once did anyone say, Tessa, tell us about your work. Not once did anyone wonder what the disappointment was actually doing. I picked up my purse from the counter. I built a healthcare system that serves 50,000 patients a year. I employ 3,000 people. I've recruited some of the best physicians in the country, including the ones who operate in your departments, Marcus. Including the ones who saved Mom's life. I looked at my mother one last time. I'm glad the surgery went well. I made sure you had the best possible care, even though you didn't know it was coming from me. That's the kind of disappointment I turned out to be. I walked toward the door. Tessa, wait. Mom's voice cracked. Please don't leave. I stopped but didn't turn around. I've been leaving this table for 20 years, Mom. You just never noticed because you weren't watching. I was wrong. Her voice broke. I was so wrong about you. You were. But I don't need you to be right about me anymore. I proved myself to the only person who mattered, me. I left. The drive home was quiet. I didn't cry. I'd spent too many years building emotional calluses for that. But I felt something shift inside me, like a weight I'd been carrying had finally been acknowledged. The call started the next morning. Marcus called first, stumbling through an apology that sounded rehearsed and genuine at the same time. He wanted to know about the hospital, about my work, about the career he'd ignored for 15 years. Valerie called next. She cried. She said she'd been so focused on her own achievements that she'd never considered I might have mine. She asked if we could have lunch. Julian sent a text. Short, direct, lawyerly. I underestimated you. I'm sorry. Let me know if you ever need legal counsel. Mom's call came last. I've been thinking all night, she said, her voice thin. About everything I missed. Every graduation I didn't celebrate. Every promotion I didn't acknowledge. Every time I compared you to your siblings like you were less than them. I know. I told people you were my biggest disappointment. And you were in the kitchen of a hospital you owned, saving my life. That's not why I did it, I said quietly. I didn't build Lakewood to prove anything to you. I built it because I wanted to help people. Because I understood that healthcare systems need good management as much as they need good doctors. Because being a business major doesn't mean you don't care about saving lives. It just means you save them differently. Mom was crying now. Can you ever forgive me? I thought about the question. About the decades of dismissal. About the silent dinners and the ignored achievements and the constant measuring against standards I was never meant to meet. I forgave you a long time ago, I said finally. Holding on to anger would have slowed me down. I had too much to build. I want to understand what you built. I want to know my daughter. The real one, not the disappointment I invented. Then start asking questions. Start listening to the answers. That's all I ever wanted. We talked for another hour. Not about the hospital or the money or the success. About smaller things. Favorite books. Morning routines. The parts of my life I'd never shared because no one wanted to hear them. It was a beginning. Late, imperfect, but real. Lakewood Regional continues to thrive. We just opened a new cancer center that Valerie now directs. Marcus led a symposium on neurological surgery in our new conference facility. The siblings who once overlooked me now collaborate with me. Mom volunteers at the hospital gift shop twice a week. She tells everyone who'll listen that her daughter owns the building. The same daughter she once called her biggest disappointment. People change. Slowly. Imperfectly. But they change. If you're watching this and your family has ever dismissed you, underestimated you, or called you their disappointment, I want you to know something. Their vision isn't your limit. Build quietly. Build relentlessly. Build until the day comes when they finally see you, not because you forced them to look, but because your achievements became impossible to ignore. My mom said I was her biggest disappointment. Now she volunteers at the hospital I own. If this story hit home, share yours in the comments. And subscribe, because the next story might be exactly what you needed to hear.